Hello, everybody. Warren Frey, digital mediator with the Journal of Commerce and Daily Commercial News. And with me, I have.
Hi, Warren. I'm Chris Atchison. I'm president of the BC Construction Association.
And we're here to talk about how this election is going to affect, one way or the other, the construction industry in BC and nationally. I guess I'd start with this has been highly criticized by a couple different parties for being called during a pandemic. How do you think the pandemic has affected this election, if it has at all?
Yeah, I think the pandemic has definitely affected this election. I think in the provincial election that we held, we saw an NDP government capitalize on good timing because the public opinion on the way they were handling the pandemic at the time was relatively strong. I think there was a miscalculation on behalf of the federal Liberals that they maybe thought that we're going to take maybe a page out of the playbook here in British Columbia, and it couldn't have worked out differently. And I think that there is, like I said, it was a miscalculation, and I think that they misread the overall Canadian sentiment about their handling of the pandemic and their timing of this election.
And conversely, I don't know if Jason Kenney's apology is going to do any favors to our Aaron O'Toole. We don't know yet. We will tonight, I suppose. But that is another. Not that was Aaron O'Toole's fault. He didn't really call the election. So, but this is it sort of illustrates what you're saying about how these factors come out of nowhere that people can't control.
Well, absolutely. And you know, we're if you would have called this election or anticipated this election in early July, it might not have been so bad. But the way things materialized in August, and maybe the election train was already well predetermined by then. But we're tired. Canadians are tired. Industry is tired. We've proven resilient time and time again in order to keep our businesses afloat, in order to keep our workers safe, in order to keep our families together. We don't need an election at this time in the midst of a fourth wave.
Mm-hmm. And well, we are having an election regardless. So, and whoever is in, like we've talked about off air, you're going to have to deal with them. So what are some issues you want to see addressed no matter who gets in?
Yeah, absolutely. And no matter who gets in, there's going to be a role for construction in Canada to play. And, Canada is well poised to rebound in this country because of the role that construction will continue to play following the COVID-19 pandemic. But I guess what we want to say and what we want to see is a continued investment in the infrastructure of Canada. Invest in Canada, invest in Canadians, and invest in infrastructure. That's the mantra that we are falling in line with the Canadian Construction Association. We really believe that should be a commitment made by whoever comes to power, is that to acknowledge the role that our industry has played in preserving some semblance of normalcy during the pandemic, because we've been deemed non-healthcare essential, and because of our safety protocols, we've been able to do and conduct business somewhat as usual, notwithstanding some disruptions to supply chains, et cetera, and some cost escalations. But we've been able to see the industry to some extent withstand some of this, where other sectors have struggled more, and we've been there to try to support them where we can. But there's $141 billion annually that goes into the national economy as a result of the construction industry across Canada. And on a national level, we're 7.5% of the national gross domestic product. So with those numbers in mind, we want to make sure that we're dialoguing with the incoming government to make sure that they are working with us to plan for the future and to invest in infrastructure, not just 1 year at a time, but decades at a time.
That you mentioned infrastructure, and that makes me think of a couple of certain candidates have said we want to get rid of the infrastructure bank. What do you think of? Do you think that's a good idea or a bad idea?
Yeah, it's really we haven't seen the benefits of the infrastructure bank as maybe as prevalent as we have or as it's been in other areas of the country. So I don't really have a comment on that. I think it can work. Maybe it just needs a little bit more of a tweak. But whatever whatever party comes to power, they're going to have their own mind made up on that, and we will work with it if it can work with us.
Mm-hmm. And just in terms of the economy, day one when this party gets in, conservative or liberal is most likely, but either or, what are the key economic priorities they've got to handle besides obviously the pandemic? There's probably other ones as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we've mentioned a commitment to investment in infrastructure. That's got to be maintained. We need to develop a plan, and we need to develop a plan hand in hand with that with the incoming party. But I think it needs to be said that we are facing a tremendous skills shortage, and the disruptions to the workforce in Canada are being felt in a number of sectors. And there is a significant need for our industry to be reckoned with, and to, because we need that workforce. If things need to get built, we're going to need the workforce to do it. The construction industry should be seen by Canadians as a high opportunity occupation. And too often we've been marginalized, and it's kind of that last choice of people who can't make it in other sectors. We need to turn that perception on its ear and point to these amazing careers that people can build from a young age towards retirement in many facets of our industry. And I think by celebrating what is good about our industry through a national program, through provincial programs that can help to change the attitudes around our culture, and we've got work to do ourselves. And I think everyone on our side is prepared to roll up our sleeves and say, we are doing what we can, but we need the help of the federal and provincial governments to make sure that they are recognizing that these jobs pay well, they provide great benefits, they provide portability across the country in terms of labor market downturns. They are skilled professionals who can do this work, and it doesn't get solved by just bringing in the mandate for quotas on different construction projects. That's not a way to build up the to build up the the sentiment that these are the high opportunity occupations instead of the necessary fallback occupations for communities who otherwise might not be best served in our industry.
Now, it's a federal election, but it's been said that BC might be what turns the page one way or the other. Like, we might be the votes that change that. So as somebody who's representing BC interests, in a sense, what do you think BC should get out of this thing one way or the other?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think all indications are that BC will be, you always hear in the American election swing states. Well, I think we're a swing province this time around. So I think the outcome of this election is going to mean that there's certain priorities that we have, again, with regards to the provincial economy, the role that we've played in keeping BC strong and vibrant and an important part of the national fabric, and the role that construction has played in that. I mean, we have been a huge success story, not only in terms of the role we've played in safety during COVID, but the continuity of our workforce, the safety of our workforce, and the need to see more investment come our way to make sure the procurement is done well. We haven't got prompt payment resolved yet in British Columbia, so there's a national commitment, but that hasn't materialized or manifested itself on the ground in British Columbia. So we will want to see that the federal government parlays what it's done in Ottawa with regards to prompt payment legislation, and make sure that all of our contractors in British Columbia can get paid fairly and on time for the work that they've done. There is, we've talked about the economic impact that we have for our provincial GDP, let alone our federal one. And there is so much money that's being left on the table. There is so much loss of revenues because of risk mitigation that small contractors are facing. So we need to be better. We need to be better managing the industry and manage it fairly in a way that encourages the businesses to set up shop here and to thrive here, not just try to find a way to scratch out an existence. Because prompt payment legislation will go a long way to kind of make sure that the taxpayer dollars go further.
Now, BCCA has been sort of at the forefront, at least here provincially, of sort of pushing for diversity and pushing for, ending bullying on job sites and just changing attitudes. What kind of support have you gotten federally up to now, and what would you like to see post-election day on that front?
Yeah, federally, so we have great relationships on the workforce front with CICC or IRCC, pardon me, in Ottawa, and we work with them on our Integrating Newcomers program, working with pre-approved newcomers to Canada who are still in their home country, who have experience in the construction sector, and we give them the labor market information so that they can choose British Columbia and that they can come to work in our sector. So some of these things are already underway. We're looking to expand that model. We'll work with the provincial government as well to make sure that we can build upon the successes we've seen for a newcomer program. We want to see more investment in apprenticeship training. Those dollars that need to flow from Ottawa down to the province so that we can have effective labor market programming. We need to see an investment in the training seats for apprenticeship. We need to make sure that we're building both the skills and the reputation of our workforce. So, and the labor force shortages aren't going to be solved by our, our current population. We're going to have to see net in-migration, and that will include new Canadians to help fill the gaps in our sector and other sectors as well.
Okay. Now, let's say the Liberals win. There's a certain continuity of government there because they've been in charge for the past 5 years. Let's say somebody else wins. What would you say would be the things you'd say, okay, this is what you have to immediately hone in on in order to help out our industry?
Yeah, well, we've talked about making sure that they know that there are there are definitely supply chain issues that are going to affect the productivity and the resilience of the Canadian economy. And I would say that they'll need to pay attention to those aspects to make sure that our construction continuity is maintained. So let's not just say construction's okay, let's leave it alone. There are other factors under the surface that could still rear up. We've mentioned prompt payment. We've mentioned investment in the workforce. We do think that all of those things are going to be a huge priority. And also to refresh, if it's a new government, let's look at refreshing government's approach to fair and open procurement processes as well. Procurement is a big part of what we advocate for here in BC. We want it to be done with full account, with freedom of information, fair, open, and transparent procurement practices from the industry side and from the government ownership side. So we want to make sure that we can address, maybe consider some other uses of delivery models, delivery methods, technology. But let's re-examine this whole approach to procurement, because the amount of dollars, taxpayer dollars, that are going into this infrastructure spend need to be done to the highest level of integrity and account.
Okay, and every single party that I can think of, other than one, says climate change is a major issue, and also the Liberals have up to this point said they've sort of balanced out resources and green concerns. What would you say would be for the next government, them or otherwise, in terms of balancing climate change and the fact that we're a resource economy?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think we've always been big proponents of this message around building back smarter. There's a great deal of emphasis on green building and infrastructure and climate change. This is important, and but in an era of climate change, when in BC alone, we face over 50 natural hazards, including the big ones like fire, flood, tsunami, earthquake. We also need to start conditioning our industry and conditioning our senior decision makers to build back smarter. We need buildings and infrastructure that doesn't just preserve life during an earthquake, but that are built to be operable within a few days of weeks of disaster. So, we need to build buildings that are, beyond code. And we need to start receiving that leadership and that type of investment from our federal counterparts. And I know that BC is making some strides, but we're pushing back. It's not just a matter of, green building. That's great, but green rubble is still rubble. So we need to build back smarter with crisis recovery mindset in mind. And these investments in infrastructure, I think we need to be looking at them so as they cannot create additional risk. They need to be built for the future. So we would want, the new government to come in with a fresh outlook on building back smarter using technology and innovation.
Okay, Chris, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Warren.